Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Men Talking Mindfulness episode. I'm going solo today. This is yours truly, Will Schneider. And John and I appreciate you being here. If you'd like to plug into what we're doing and more of what we're doing, just simply text MTM to 33777 or, hey, hit up mentalkingmindfulness.com. We appreciate you being part of this community and helping us to grow our community. Invite your friends in, everybody. There's a lot that we can grow and learn by listening to this information. So I thought I'd do things a little bit differently today and bring awareness from one of the greatest leaders that ever walked this planet, Abraham Lincoln, in my opinion. So let's learn some wisdom from him I'm going to break down some quotes of his. Abraham has a lot of wisdom to share. So, I thought I'd share some of this wisdom with you, mentioning some of his most profound quotes, to help remind us, help us, and to wake us up from some of the bullshit that's getting in the way of who we can be. A little history on Abraham Lincoln, and, he led the United States, through the Civil War, abolished slavery, was the 16th president of the United States. He was, and also strengthened the federal government. He was born into poverty in Kentucky. He's self-educated and became a lawyer. I didn't realize he was self-educated, so no excuses out there. In the realm of leadership, Lincoln is often cited as an example of emotional intelligence and also has the ability to manage a team of strong-willed individuals. His leadership style during the Civil War is highlighted for its inclusivity of differing opinions and for him not insulating himself from important dissent, which, think about that, how powerful that is. Instead of being a know-it-all, and trying to control everything, what does it mean to just sit, listen, and take in other opinions, and maybe that'll inform your choices and move forward. Abraham Lincoln has been described as a self-made man of great character and virtue, a shrewd and wise leader, a compassionate figure with a strong moral compass, and a complex individual whose actions were sometimes contested, but whose impact on the nation, our nation, is undeniable. So I'm gonna do 8 quotes here from Abraham Lincoln, and let's just dive right in. So, first one I have here, he says, "I do not think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday." Let that sink in for a second. I do not think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday. This is pretty bold, and obviously, he was not a man who wanted to spend much time with people who weren't growing or people who are kind of wasting their time and their energy in this time that we have on this planet. But ask yourself, are you one of these people that kind of is a learn-it-all, which is great, and keeps you growing, or are you a know-it-all and kind of you stay rigidly in the box that you've created with all of your beliefs of how the world should be, and then typically get kind of angry when the world is not being the way you want it to be. I think growth is really important if you really want to be an awesome human being. But what does growth require? It requires a beginner's mindset, and also, living with curiosity instead of control. And what do you need to do to turn on your curiosity? What do you need to do to access your beginner's mind? One thing that I would definitely recommend is just getting the basics, like we talk about on the show all the time. Getting to know your breath, meditating, and understanding your mind and your emotions and all the triggers and your relationship that you already have, the relationships to things in the world, not just your relationships, like personal relationships, which are very important, but also your relationship to your mind, your work, all the different things that are in your life are all done through relationships. So, and if you're not growing, then what are you doing? So, and what do you do? What do you need to do to grow? And maybe need some help doing that. So, maybe get a coach, or just start trying to do things a little bit differently and step out of the box of, well, this is just the way things are, or this is just the way that I do things, or this is the way I've always done things, and grow. And I'll just say that quote again. I do not think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday. All right, here's number 2. Whatever you are, be a good one. How simple, right? Whatever you are, be a good one. And I think it's interesting, his choice of words here, good. Good can mean also, being kind, being respectful, being patient, all the qualities that make us, good people and good citizens. I also want to plug that here as well. Good also means, be good at it. Why waste your time like half-assing something when you can actually be good? So what is getting in your way of being good, and what is it, and how can you overcome it, and how can you change it? From my experience, it's what a gift it is to acquire more skills and to become more proficient at something. Not only does it make the work I'm doing a little easier and maybe more fun, what it also does, from my experience, is provide more confidence. So everything that I get a little better at, like, I just wonder, it's like, oh, what else can I get better at? What else can I do? And I just keep trying to develop more skills at everything, whether I'm in the kitchen, learning to, cut vegetables in a different way, or cook in a different way, or try a new recipe, being a better leader, being a better teacher, being a better speaker, being a better podcaster, being a person, that, grows my plants in my apartment a little bit better. I want them. So there's so many opportunities that you can build this confidence by just being better at the things that you do and being good at what you do, instead of wasting your time half-assing it. What also came up for me as I read this quote was, why doesn't he say, whatever you do or whatever you are, be a great one? And I was like, oh, why doesn't he say great? And then I was like, oh, well, let's look at the difference between good and great. So I've actually been using this new AI platform called Perplexity, which I actually kind of really enjoy. It was brought to me by John, and I are hiring a new, SEO website optimizer. And this guy, Matt, who's going to be our SEO guy, mentioned this AI platform called Perplexity. And hey, by the way, if you want to leave a donation and help us grow the show and give us a little financial support, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com or hit up the text, and please, we love your help. So thank you. In sports, being good involves, so this is from, I'm going to kind of read through some of the stuff that came from this Perplexity, which I really enjoyed how it popped it back. And it says here, in sports, being good involves possessing a certain level of skill and sportsmanship, which includes treating others respectfully, accepting responsibility for mistakes, and maintaining a positive attitude. However, transitioning from good to great involves a deeper commitment and often is a transformational process. Great athletes or teams not only have exceptional skill, but also exhibit a profound understanding of the game, a relentless drive to improve, and the ability to perform under pressure. They often have a significant impact on their sport and can elevate the performance of those around them. I love it. Great. And also what I'll say here, greatness requires a lot of commitment and time, and some of us might not have that time right now. But I guess, greatness isn't always an option. It's something you really need to commit to and really go to. But what is greatness in leadership? For companies and leaders, the difference between good and great can be attributed to a clear sense of purpose, adhere to core values, and the ability to make conscious choices that align with those values. Great companies and leaders are characterized by their ability to innovate, inspire, and drive change. Awesome, right? Great companies and leaders are characterized by their ability to innovate, inspire, and drive change. They are not satisfied with the status quo and are constantly seeking ways to improve and grow. Love it, love it, love it. This is, I don't know, just as I'm reading this, I'm like, this is just such great information, even though I'm doing and saying this information. So thanks for listening. Yeah, and I have here, I don't need to be Jimi Hendrix, although I can learn to play the guitar, right? And what is playing the guitar going to help me to do next? What's it going to light up my brain? What's confidence going to bring? All right, here, third quote from Abraham Lincoln. He says, "I have always found that mercy bears richer fruit than strict justice." And he's speaking from experience here, right? Once again, he says, "I have always found from his experience, obviously, that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice." And as a student and teacher of compassion, this is music to my ears. And compassion, in a nutshell, is the willingness to help someone out of their suffering. And therefore, self-compassion is the willingness to help ourselves out of our own suffering. And it's impossible to really move forward without, forgiving somebody. And that's part of what mercy is. Part of what compassion is kind of forgiving and moving on. And if you're not forgiving and you're kind of stuck in the energy of some sort of transgression and whatever happened before, right, is keeping you locked in the past and keeping you locked out of the opportunities that are right here, right now, in the present moment. So what do you need to do? What do you need to do to move on? From my experience, most people are good people and are doing the best they can with what they know, where they came from, and how they're feeling. But also, hey, stress, anxiety, rage, anger, emptiness, misery, overwhelm, and other negative emotions, they make people do dumb things, say dumb things. And I know that's true from my own experience as well. But dive in, just take a moment, and what are the fruits of extending mercy? What happens when you forgive and move on, or and really come to some understanding of how that why that person would do this kind of thing. So what are some of the fruits that are brought forth when you extend mercy? Well, you establish a connection with the other person in a way that could be helpful to both of you. There's a sense of respect. There's respect that we have this common humanity, because we all do things and that are not our best selves that are coming forward. This also creates healthier relationships. There's an openness, a peacefulness, and I'm sure you can mention or know other things that happened that you've experienced by extending mercy. But also, I'll give you a little tool here. What's helped me, and this came through my compassion training with Stanford last year. These 3 words have been really helpful for me to stop judging people for injustices, whether injustice to me or to other people or to the world in some way. Especially when I'm judging somebody for some sort of injustice they did to me, I turn it back around with these 3 words: just like me. And these 3 words have rescued me from a lot of heartache and a lot of time wasting by replaying this injustice over and over and over again in my mind. Where in reality, these 3 words, what they do, just like me, right, help me to realize or reflect and think about. It's like, where have I done something similar like this in the past? And who am I to judge, when I've kind of done a similar thing in the past as well. So these 3 words are really powerful in a way to kind of reframe the moment, reframe the relationship, and kind of put you back into the seat of that we're human beings doing the best we can. So yeah, just like me. Because honestly, in some ways, I'm just like them. So next up, number 4, Abraham Lincoln says, I'm going to say it every time. Abraham Lincoln says, quote, "My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure." My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure. And I was a little stumped when I first read this, because what does it mean to be content with your failure? I'm a real believer that, failure is just the, it's like this other side of the coin of just life. success and failure. One informs the other, and without failure, it's almost impossible to achieve success because there's nothing to grow from. There's nothing to measure. There's nothing to learn from. So failure and feedback are just, again, two sides of the same coin, are essential for growth. But also he says, what does it mean to be content? I mean, if you're content with your failure, then, you're just being complacent. You're unbothered by the results that you just experience. And so there's no growth here in just failing and not trying again. As you know, it's humbling to learn from our mistakes. Here's a little story. Like, when I first became an actor, or my first year and a half, 2 years of trying to pursue acting and getting to the craft and really putting myself out there in so many different ways, it was just incredibly humbling and scary. But I learned a lot about myself because I put myself in a lot of challenging circumstances. And one of the first audition I ever had was very, very, very challenging. And this is back in Philadelphia in, I guess, 2001 sometime. Probably 2001. And I remember going to this audition. I had headshots. I had my resume in the back of my headshot. Like, I've been studying the craft. I've been studying the business. And here I am going nervous as hell into my very, very first audition. And I'm asked to do an improv scene. And which I'm like, I have really no experience in improv. So I'm just like, and you're just making stuff up in improv. So I don't even have any technique, but I'm just going for it, doing the best I can, throwing myself out there. And on my resume, I had listed that I had like 3 different accents, which I didn't, or I thought I did, because as a kid, I could just try to fake like a German accent or a English accent. And I'm doing this audition, and I did the first part, and then the second part, they give me a little bit of a note, and there's like, hey, I wonder if you can, do this scene in an English accent. So I try to put on this English accent of some like grandmother or something like that. I don't know what the hell is going on. It's just really embarrassing, really mortifying. I could feel that rush of embarrassment in the audition itself. But when I got out of that audition, I had this giant release, and relief was kind of left my body. I'm like, oh my God, I just got through my first audition. No, I'm not going to get that part. But that wasn't really the point for me either. The point was to get there. The point was to try. The point was and I'm a kind of a trial by fire guy, just throw myself into it and see what happens and learn from it on the way out. So I was in that situation. I was not content with my failure. What I did was I used my failure to be like, all right, what did I learn from this? Like, well, definitely take all those accents off my resume because they obviously need to be worked on. and also, just being more present, slowing down, and just kind of using this quote unquote failure, using this, what I'd call feedback, as a way to fuel, right, what happened next, how I would show up at class, the questions I would ask. And it just really helped inform me of what I am unaware of and the skills to become good and maybe become great someday. Awesome. Moving on. All right, quote number 5. Abraham Lincoln reminds us, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Well said, huh? The best way to predict your future is to create it. So what are you doing to create your future? Also, what are you wasting your time on that's getting in the way of that future that you want? So maybe, we talk about self-reflection. We talk about journaling, which is a great way to self-reflect because it's no longer just this, mental reflection, this like kind of mental reflecting masturbation, if you like. But it's actually an active process of writing things down, and objectifying and reading them and seeing them and creating a different relationship to them by getting them out of your head and then putting them on a piece of paper. So again, what is getting in the way of the future that you want? What is it? What are some, and if you start with something small, and take back your time instead of wasting it on something that isn't fruitful and isn't going to help you to take that next step. Get that first step out of the way, and watch how the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth starts to walk you a little bit into that future that you want. So create it. We all have this opportunity. Create it. And what you might need to do is just get off the fence and get in the game. And maybe this quote by Roosevelt, another fantastic president of the United States, called "A Man in the Arena," will help inspire you to take those steps and get out of your way and begin to create that life. And Roosevelt says, "It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls that neither know victory nor defeat." A lot in that quote there. It talks about failure, which I mentioned earlier. So hope that inspires you to begin to take those first steps to create the life that you want. And let the critics are critics. They're just scared people. All they're doing is criticizing you, which is essentially they're just criticizing themselves for their lack of inaction because they're locked in fear instead of taking those humbling first steps and not being afraid to fall and stumble and fail as you begin to walk yourself into the future that you want. All right, back to more greatness from Abraham Lincoln. Quote number 6. He says, "Folks are usually about as happy as they make their minds up to be." How true is this? Folks are usually about as happy as they make their minds up to be. Again, how true? And ask yourself, what is keeping you from happiness? What stories are you telling yourself that make you feel sad or weak or not good enough? And what is one small action you can take right now, today, this week, that can wake you up to the happiness that you have, the happiness that you are, the happiness that you can create? And just, again, small as all, one little step on the path to more happiness, one step at a time. All of a sudden you begin to journey into happiness instead of waiting for happiness to happen for you or putting weight on a particular event. And if that event doesn't bring you happiness, then you're going to feel like crap, right? Life is about the journey, not about the destinations, not about necessarily the results that you continually create, but the process, how you're feeling as you work towards whatever that goal is that you're trying to pursue. And if you do it with more happiness, if you do it with more love, do it with more self-kindness, do it with more self-patience with yourself and patience for other people, it's amazing what you can create and the happiness that you can have in your life. And this will also help to change your mind and understand that happiness is something that's very natural for us, but we must have this mental shift in order to create more happiness and be with happiness. All right, how about this quote? Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? I love like the whole thing here, to play on words too. It's a question. He goes, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? I think you can see, a common theme here that Abraham Lincoln, it's about like bridging the gap, overcoming your ego's want for justice and, for someone to feel, for revenge, for being right, for controlling situations, for, being the alpha male, if you will. So what happens but think about enemy, what it does. Like, what happens when you consider someone your enemy or someone that is your enemy? What happens mentally, what happens emotionally, what happens physically to you? And look at all the energy that you put into that enemy-like relationship, and is it worth it to do that, and just to live with all that energy, that enemy, that having an enemy does, and division. It all honestly goes against our first nature. And our first nature, one of our first natures, is connecting, is bonding, is being together as human beings. And really what makes us so powerful, and what makes us really so unique from a lot of the rest of the animal kingdom, is using our collective energy in order to grow, in order to learn, in order to survive, in order to conquer, in order to create. And bonding and being together, it makes us stronger, and that's just a simple fact. And having enemies actually weakens you, it weakens them, it weakens your, the things that you want to create, the things you want, the happiness that you want in your life as well. But friendships, what's required to really have a true friendship, or to create a friendship, or to bridge that gap, it requires conversation, understanding commonalities between you, right? Instead of always looking at your differences. You might not like what the other person stands for completely, but what if you just kind of take a step back from your, fortifying your position of righteousness and judgment, and what can you maybe learn about them, and learn about their position and what they believe, just by objectively and observationally understanding where they're coming from. So just really great advice here about what was also another thing. It's keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And Abraham Lincoln here is advocating just eliminate enemy ideas, enemies and feelings, and enemies in person altogether, and make them your friends. And watch how that can change your life. All right, here's the final one from our wonderful 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. He says, "I am a firm believer in people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the facts." Once again, he says, "I am a firm believer in people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The point is to bring them the facts." And in case you forgot, we live, if you're listening in the United States, we're called the United States of America. What does it take to be united? And facts and transparency is going to help us to unite, not just, on this national level, or, the grand federal stage that we kind of live in, but what about in your families, in your community, in your closest relationships, and then growing beyond that. There's an attack on truth these days. It's sad that we live in a society where it's sad for me that we wrestle and manipulate the truth. We're also in a time of censorship, what I think is really fucked up. First Amendment, right, is the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, and it's the first one for a very clear reason. That's how important it is for freedom in a society and for democracy to exist. Without truth, we the people, we cannot live in a free society. But also get to the truth on the inside of you. Sitting and getting to know yourself, sitting and meditating, calming yourself down instead of being this reactive, savage. Can you be a more calm, composed, mature human being, man or woman? And if we begin to see the fiction, right, the false narrative, the bullshit, the lies that the mind continually tries to tell us, your mind, or my mind, continually tries to tell us in order to continually manipulate us and maintain control over you, then I'm going to, there's this truth frequency on the inside. It's another thing that's part of our first biological nature of being a human being, is we just know truth. When we see it, we feel it, we experience it. And without that truth, because what does truth bring? Truth brings love. Truth brings, and what is the door that love opens up? So many wonderful things. So I really invite you to first maybe find the truth inside of you. Find out the bullshit that your mind's trying to feed you, and notice that manipulation. Notice how it tries to capture you with its drama, with its images, with its time traveling into the future, to the past. And by doing so, hopefully you can live and recognize when and where we're being lied to in society, and not put up with that stuff anymore. So that's all I have from this episode, and from our wonderful leader, Abraham Lincoln. So I hope you really enjoyed this. Maybe, go back and listen to this again and take some notes on this if you like. And maybe just take one of these quotes and look at it as an opportunity to be like, how can I weave this into my life? What do I need to do in order to make this possible? Abraham didn't live an easy life, and he came to all these wonderful insights and conclusions and wisdom by putting his best foot forward and looking at those results and wondering where he could do better and how he can do better. And here he is, one of the GOATs of leadership, one of the greatest of all time. And we talked about good to great, and you can be good at stuff, but you want to be great at anything. It's going to take a little bit more commitment, and just to be a greater sense of yourself instead of just good. I mean, good is fine, but if you want to be just a greater person, in any aspect, in your life right now, then what's the commitment that you need to take, and what are the exercises and things and practices you need to continually do in order to live further into that greatness, experience that greatness, and transform yourself from who you are now into the future and who you want to be. And not forgetting about finding that happiness. If you're not happy with what you're doing with your life, then maybe you need to look at that first, and making that shift to something that you're passionate about, something that makes you happy, whether it's, whatever it is, aspect of your life, that could be the great shift, and to live in more of this wisdom that Abraham Lincoln has attained, and these things that I mentioned today. So thank you, everybody. Share this episode. Maybe you can text. If you found this very valuable, text this episode. Send a link to 3 people that you love and admire, that can use this wisdom and help them create more of the life that they want, and get out of their own way by living in truth and living with this wisdom. So thank you, everybody. mentalkingmindfulness.com. Check it out. Share it. Thank you for being part of our growing community. And we appreciate you being here. Enjoy, everybody. Peace.